If you already made some picks for the divisional round and you have any of these players, congrats, because they're about to go absolutely nuclear. In this video, we're going to go game by game to show you what I think are the players that have the most upside relative to their projections, so lock in. Starting with game number 1, Bills at Broncos. I like anything Josh Allen related in this game, especially on the ground. We know he's about to go full Superman, but what you may not know is Allen has 8 or more rush attempts in 8 of his last 9 playoff games. So I'm not overthinking this one. He has 25 or more rushing yards in 9 of his last 11 playoff games as well. So that includes 46 on the ground last year when these two teams met in the wild card round. Full transparency, my model has this closer to 50. So this number simply way too low. Let's talk about James Cook as well on the ground. I think we're getting a huge discount here after he faced the #1 rush defense in the NFL last week, but also the Bills have leaned on him heavily in the past in the playoffs, again last year in this exact matchup where he racked up 120 yards on 23 carries. Buffalo won that game 31-7, by the way, so why wouldn't they go back to Cook here? If we talk about Khalil Shakir, I like targets. I also like receiving yards for him. He caught a career-high 12 balls last week, but also, despite how elite the Broncos defense has been at defending wide receivers, the one area of the field that they've gotten absolutely destroyed is in the slot. So considering this wide receiver group has been absolutely decimated by injury, Shakir is about to get peppered once again. I do think that if you have the opportunity to go under on his touchdown props, though, that makes a ton of sense. Denver's given up just 1 touchdown to the slot all season. So I think that's kind of interesting. Dawson Knox receptions really stands out to me. It's pretty straightforward. Dalton Kincaid was in a walking boot after the game last week, but even if he plays, nearly 30% of the receptions against Denver have gone to tight ends. So that's the 6th highest in the NFL. And if there was one pick on the other side of this game, I think it's RJ Harvey. I think that the touchdown looks pretty good here. He's obviously scored in 6 touchdowns over his last 6 games specifically, but also no one has given up more rushing touchdowns to the position than Buffalo. So that's the only play that makes sense to me on the Denver side of the ball. By the way, if you want access to my touchdown model early every single week, go to touchdownpicks.com or hit the first link in the description and put in your email. I'll send you the best touchdown picks from every game and some long shots along the way. And it's 100% free. Game 2, 49ers at Seahawks. The safest pick here is Christian McCaffrey through the air. I like receiving yards. I also like receptions. No one's given up more receptions to running backs than the Seahawks this year, but also in his last 5 games without George Kittle, CMC has averaged 72 receiving yards per game. So this one is an absolute no-brainer. He has 6 or more receptions in 5 of his last 6 games without George Kittle as well, but also his target rate per route run absolutely skyrockets to nearly 30% in those games without Kittle. That's completely insane to me. So considering the Seattle has forced the most running back receptions, this one is also a no-brainer. I think a somewhat sneaky pick here is Jackson Smith and Jigba, but specifically to score a touchdown. San Francisco is ranked 30th in pressure rate, so we know that Darnold is going to have plenty of time to take some shots downfield. But what you may not know is the 49ers have given up the 4th highest touchdown rate on throws 20-plus yards downfield. So I like a deep touchdown in this game to JSN. What I don't think enough people are talking about, though, is obviously this George Kittle injury, but how it affects guys like Kyle Juszczyk. So 30-plus receiving yards in 3 straight playoff games. So they're already kind of featuring him a little bit more when everything is on the line. But he's also lined up at tight end or in the slot for nearly 75% of his snaps without Kittle on the field. So this number feels like a gift. And I think if we wanted to talk about the other side of the ball in this game, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, it's kind of an interesting situation, right? Because this has been frustrating for fantasy owners most of the season. But we do have 2 very defined roles here. I think Walker is most likely to get the majority of the rush attempts, but Charbonnet is far more likely to get into the end zone. So I think touchdown for Charbonnet, rush attempts for Kenneth Walker makes a ton of sense, but everyone knows San Francisco gets absolutely crushed by slot receivers. So I do like Cooper Kupp in this game for a little bit of volume. But if your fantasy season isn't going how you hoped, this may help. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, to give you another way to make game day more interesting. Here's exactly how it works. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, passing yards, touchdowns, things like that. Then it's basically you calling how a player performs and seeing your picks come to life on every snap. And here's the part you should know. Right now, new DraftKings customers who play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So if you're new, you play $5 or more and they drop $50 in Pick 6 credits right into your account. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code HOLKA to unlock that offer. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Game 3, Texans at Patriots. There's a few picks that stand out to me right away, and it revolves around Ramondre Stevenson, receiving yards, receptions. Also think he's kind of a long shot touchdown scorer here that makes a ton of sense, but he's beaten this receiving yards number in 6 straight games. He's averaged 41 receiving yards over that span, but also Houston has the 4th highest pressure rate, which should lead to more checkdowns. So really like the idea of receptions as well. We've kind of been riding this explosion as a receiver over the last 6 games, but in the divisional, we obviously think that Drake May is going to be under a ton of pressure, so that it feels inevitable to get a few more checkdowns here to Stevenson. And I think if we're just looking at overall, 6th highest share of receptions to the running back position in terms of Houston, so I'm not overthinking Ramondre through the air. Also think he's an interesting touchdown option in this game. 6 total touchdowns over his last 4. Stephon Diggs receptions. I like this one a lot. Obviously, Houston has absolutely erased outside wide receivers all season, but lucky for Diggs, he's played a team high 52% of the snaps in the slot this year. Also, he's had at least 6 catches and 100 yards in 2 of his last 3 games, so I'm trusting the volume here with Diggs. Hunter Henry receptions, also think targets is interesting. We kind of know what we're getting here. We're basically getting heavy target share in the red zone. That's a stat that he led the position at this year. So even the efficiency, if it's not there, we're still going to avoid kind of the core strength of this elite Texans defense. So I'm locking this one in. And also, if you can take the under on Kayshon Boutte, I think that makes a ton of sense as well. The Texans are by far the best team in the NFL at defending outside wide receivers and throws 20 plus yards downfield. So I'm not sure how else to say it. He's the one guy that I would be taking picks against. And I would say, again, this extends a little bit to the other side of the ball, but CJ Stroud without Nico Collins, the only thing that really makes sense for me is fading him on passing yards. Game 4, Rams at Bears. I obviously like Matthew Stafford to throw multiple touchdowns. He's done so in 12 straight games. Chicago's also allowed the 4th most passing touchdowns in the NFL. But here's the key. They've given up only 9 rushing touchdowns to running backs all season. And we can add in that they have the highest Vegas team total in the division round overall. So we know exactly what we're getting and we know exactly where the touchdowns are going, which leads us to Puka Nacua and Davante Adams. So this one feels relatively straightforward. Puka and Davante have earned 68 targets over their last 3 games together, but that's not the craziest part. The craziest part is in the wildcard round. One of them was targeted on 74% of Stafford's attempts, which feels completely insane. I would say if there was an upside pick that I really like here, though, I like the Puka Nacua longest catch number. I also think that if we're going to take a touchdown here, makes a lot of sense for Davante Adams. Only the Cowboys and Lions gave up more TDs to wide receivers than Chicago. So like the Davante Adams touchdown, like the Puka Nacua longest reception. And I think if we're fading anything on the Rams side of the ball, Kyren Williams, I think the way that the Rams win this game is going to be through the air. So I think the rushing yards is a little bit high for Kyren. And then if we're talking through the other side of this game, the one that I feel the most confident in is Rome Odunze. I don't think most people realize this, but LA has struggled massively to defend the perimeter, giving them the 5th highest yards per target to outside wide receivers this year. And Odunze played nearly 75% of his snaps out wide last week. So lock this in and thank me later.